Hello. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this excellent conference on digital nomadism as a global and Siberian trend. I am honored to be included in this event. Unfortunately, you're only seeing a digital representation of me. In real-time space continuum, I am likely on a train in Europe, but perhaps this is appropriate for a conference that engages the idea that the normal boundaries of space and time are shifting, or at least our experience of them is shifting. So my digital image echoes hello, it is just as real as if I was there, just delayed a bit. Здравствуйте. Alright, well let's get to it. This discussion is called New Digital Realities in a Fragmented Brave New World, and begins. The digital nomad has come a long way since Manners and Nakamoto wrote the seminal text on the subject. They truly did see a future that is now coming to pass. As we are seeing, digital journalists, telecommuters, and more are utilizing technology in a way that breaks normal boundaries of time and space. Digital nomads are a natural outgrowth of an ontology that has a weakened sense of material, time, and spatial realities. The ontological displacement created by the technologically determined fluidity of these realities has made all millennials, Generation Z, or members of Axel Brunn's Generation C digital nomads to one level or another. Brunn's idea of a generation that is not determined by age but by technological engagement is truly applicable for phenomena like digital nomadism. But while there is a great focus on the digital nomad journalist or the telecommuter who moves to an island in the South Pacific and works from under a coconut tree, this phenomena is actually more comprehensive and cannot be limited to the emblematic examples of the digital nomad. For example, in America, the simple act of leaving home to go to college physically and then continuing to socialize and create community with those who might be more than 1,000 miles away is a type of nomadism. The telecommuter, who is also known as those who engage in computer-supported cooperative work according to Nakamoto and Manners, who works from home and interacts on conference calls and video meetings with people in diverse, often international locations, is a type of nomad. Then, the digital nomad journalist, who lives out an embodied version of ontological displacement, is a nomad as well. The embodiment of the digital nomad allows for a phenomenological overtone to this discussion and creates a bridge to talk about how what is, as it is experienced, is changing in substantive ways that literally change conceptions of constants such as time and space. Kakahira proposed 3 distinct dimensions of human interaction that are altered through the use of digital technology: spatial, temporal, and contextual mobility. Contextual dimensions of reality, or our experience of reality, are moving from something that is linear and narrative to something that is yet undefined. Of course, McLuhan's technological determinism and the following explosion of construction and deconstruction of this idea is and are central to the thesis of this discussion. While media ecology sometimes gets a bad rap, its generative nature makes it an excellent place to position a work, though nomadic and post-human discourse is developing into an established area of inquiry itself, and thus make media ecology tangential. While the following will overlap with Hale's and others' ideas about the post-human that have developed, or have been critiqued and possibly deconstructed by Callan and Latour's actor network theory, or non-human theory, this discussion will not be encumbered by the progressivism of Hale's or the obsessive objectivism of actor network theory. In the tradition of excited critique and hopeful theory building, others have developed with labels including the inhuman, antihuman, transhuman, inhumane, and more, with their respective focuses in between and around the ideas of posthuman and non-human, further complicating an already robust and growing area of inquiry. There is no need to become overly philosophical about the agency of the soul debated between the posthuman and non-human camps. Is the human simply a material reality interacting with other material, or a non-naturalistic structure? Really, this debate harkens back to the old ontological and even theological debate between determinism and free will and human agency. The stance of this research is to leave the unanswerable questions alone and focus on interacting with the actual outcomes and realities that such agency, regardless of source, is developing. What is happening, and why is it happening? To a point, I suppose. It is interesting that I get to do this in an alternative format of a YouTube video. This academic piece, by the very presentation method used, is engaging the debate in this arena about what transmission methods are the best ways to access ideas today, and what are the activities of critical thinking supposed to look like in the future. Rosi Bradiotti's discussion in her text about nomadic theory is engaging, and while this is still a bound representation that is not fluid, it is out there on the web, accessible, portable, and alterable. But here I digress. It is just fun to representationally be what I'm attempting to describe, at least to some extent. Now, interestingly, while this presentational method is disembodied for me, the presenter, the reception of this will allow for a parasocial level of embodiment and relationship that will actually make it a more gendered and embodied experience than a traditional paper. If this was only a written text that I had sent to you, it would be only about the text. While the intentions of the author are always present in the text, it is easier to divorce traditional print from the source. The author is simply an abstraction. But through my image relating to you, something more is happening. Again, a parasocial interaction is taking place, as well as an abstract discussion. As with everything, this adds something and takes something away. It adds authenticity. This is me, presenting this material. The who is no longer anonymous, amorphous unreality, but a graphic representation of my embodied self, transported to you digitally. This also then adds the sociological implications of embodiment, privilege, gender, and affect. Luckily, the affirming nature of nomadic theory reduces the tension created by Hegelian dialectical winning behavior in favor of critique for the common good or the common creation, instead of for a constant deconstruction. While privilege and gender must be recognized, the focus on building instead of tearing down allows any participant, regardless of cultural status, to be a part of the solution, instead of the personification of a problem. This discussion will certainly be influenced by my cultural location. How could it not? But the reality that this is a discussion and not an attempt at creating or sustaining hegemony allows it to be generative in a powerful way. So with that said, this work is generative in nature, and that is a theory-creating piece that is speculative and untested. This qualitative and even personal approach is valuable because it frees me to speculate based on my own interactions and understanding as to the nature of the relationship between the cultural effects of digitization upon individual experience. This follows many theorists, including Manners, Makamoto, Hales, and more, who, while they reference a great deal of scholarship, primarily act as creative agents, developing ideas and frameworks that can later be tested and either constructed upon or deconstructed, for better or worse. Normally, I engage in research through qualitative methods, particularly phenomenological analysis of in-depth interviews and observation. I only say this to establish that I believe research is exceptionally important, and quantitative research can establish theory and allow for generalizability and more, which is eminently valuable also. But while there is a place for traditional academic approaches, there is also a place for McLuhanistic generative approach that is critically developed, but otherwise unfettered. The contention of this discussion is that digitization has drastically altered how people engage in time and space. As Bradiotti said, the central tenet of nomadic thought is to reassert the dynamic nature of thinking and the need to reinstate movement at the heart of thought by actualizing a non-unitary vision of the thinking subject. While the experience of reality has changed, what has it changed to, and what does that look like? While digital nomad journalists represent an extreme, embodied personification of an unbound nomadic individual, the mom who works from home through her desktop computer is experiencing a type of digital nomadism herself. There are many potential ways to classify the digital nomad. This approach looks at how individuals might experience embodiment and disembodiment. In reality, the digital nomad is a very embodied typological form of a greater phenomenon. They are living out a representation of the freedom they experience through the use of information and communication technologies, ICTs, in the digital realm. Digitally, one is unbound by time and space, so the digital nomad lives in this universe of technologically created boundlessness, and then decides to engage life as one unbound by time and space, both inspired and enabled by ICT. There are other ways of living outside of normal conceptions of time and space. Another way of engaging this shifting ontology is to be physically static, but act as a nomad through digital means. The gamer or telecommuter is living as a disembodied nomad. They travel through digital space, coming into contact with sentient and mechanistic realities without physically moving. While their bodies are static, their relational matrix, which is to say their sociocultural space, is traveling the globe and really traveling into alternate realities in many ways, but is ultimately disembodied. The list that I am developing is by no means a static creation. This is an active list in every sense of the word. Really, a wiki could be produced, and I likely will produce, that would allow this list to be co-created with you and others. Maybe when I get off this train, I'll work on that. But lists, categories, themes, and the like are arbitrary and assigned. Really, this is attempting to create a catalog of experience that could be added to or reduced. And while this list is simple, one could potentially add layers of themes to the current list of examples of experience in an attempt to group the experiences into greater abstractions. So again, this list represents a spectrum with several locations on the spectrum. Each location is a proposed typological experience of a level of embodiment or disembodiment of digital nomadism. The nomad spectrum, from embodied to disembodied. First, we have the purposeful nomad. This type of nomad goes physically for a reason to a place. The journalist, the salesperson, the executive, and more fit into this category. I might posit that the earliest technological nomads were sailors. They found a technology that allowed them to extend the bounds of their spatial reality, proverbially jumping from one culture to another, all the while carrying their own culture in tow. The digital nomad, carrying their ICT, now can carry their culture with them in their pocket instead of in a boat. And what's more, they have nearly unlimited access to communicate with their previous world and culture. This type of nomad embodies the unbound nature of the digital nomad. This embodiment is significant. It directly illustrates determinism in a powerful way. People literally become embodiments of the digital experience. Second, the rejectors, those who have rejected technology completely and decided that digital reality is not real. Interestingly, the converse of the purposeful nomad is the next most embodied trope. While the purposeful nomad is literally embodying a lived form of digitization, the rejector is embodying a rejection of or a reaction to that digital culture. This rejection is significant in that it shows there is a cultural location, possibly even a hegemonic one, that a form of digital dissident is interacting with through rejection. This is a highly embodied form. Then the adventure nomad, those who go physically to diverse locations, but their purpose is found within the journey and experience, and digital communication is secondary. The purposeful nomad embodies this trend, but the adventure nomad is separated from the digital culture in that they are not engaging in their lifestyle because of digitization. Cruises have existed for a long time now. One could argue that the cruiser is a nomad, but again, they are not embodying a disembodiment. They are going to participate in an activity. 4. The unintentional nomad. The college student, the person who takes a job in a new physical location, the military person who is displaced by her station, etc., are all examples of those who reside one place physically, but primarily relate to socially with people who are materially dislocated. Prior to digitization, when a person moved, they had to establish all new relationships and the host of things that go with that. Now, even though a person moves potentially thousands of miles away, they can primarily find themselves culturally or socially situated in a different physical space. 5. The engineers, those with programming skills who literally create the digital space where all the others reside. This is one of the most interesting groups to me. The engineers are the ones who construct the virtual bridges that we traverse in this new experience of time and space, while they, in reality, are the ones who put together the technological architecture of this new form. They themselves are sometimes distanced from it, or experience their own subcultures within it in diverse ways. It is something like the Matrix. The engineers participate in the Matrix as a known sort of technological abstraction. This understanding separates them from the rest, and through this separation provides a unique culture and social order with its own set of rules. 6. The digitally branded individuals, those whose reality is established not by utility, but by cultural norms or expectations of their physical location. Just like the person who watched too much TV in the 70s or 80s, Many in upcoming generations follow a cultural flow found almost solely through ICTs. They might just be in high school or college, but their social norms and cultural expectations are established through a parasocial relationship with digital texts and other similar people they find in their digital tribes. This person is constantly traversing the digital world while residing in the material world. The interesting thing to me about this type and following types is they often become more connected to a physical location or home as they're more enmeshed in their tribes. The digital resident, they are almost exclusively socialized digitally and reside during conscious life primarily in the digital realm. This is when one moves beyond trend interactions digitally and decides to almost literally reside in the digital world or worlds. This is the world of Warcraft player who spends 8 to 14 hours per day online, or the massively multiplayer online role-playing game participant who stops engaging in the material world in favor of engaging through ICT. This is a completely disembodied form of nomad who lives completely through their device. They find everything from self-actualization to love through their devices. 8. The invisible digital, those who completely hide their identity online but socialize a great deal in the digital realm through tools like Snapchat and/or those who use avatars and on other social platforms. This form has existed since ICT was created. ICT creates a secondary shell around the onion that is every human, which gives another layer to hide behind if that is desired. As I tell my students, online perception is reality. Generation Z sometimes understands this concept better than previous generations, sometimes not, and creates digital masks to do everything from avoid parental oversight to explore new identities. The invisible digital recognizes how fragile the online brand can be and therefore chooses to only be real online for those that they personally know or desire to be engaged with. This step is interesting because it possibly moves ICT squarely back into the realm of a tool and out of the ubiquitous role of universe. And now I'll include 2 non-Western forms that I've come into contact with. 9. The digital farmer. This is a non-Western form, and while my experience is of Western culture, and thus the majority of the types that I've included in this list are found in that experience, I tangentially have interacted with other types of nomads. The typical digital farmer is the Maasai man or woman who uses a mobile phone as a device to know when they should take their cattle to market and when to graze. The person's economic and spatial decisions are heavily influenced by their use of ICT, and there's of course more there. 10. The cafe gamer. This second non-Western form is when a person goes to a physical location to participate in a digital experience. In many ways, this is similar to the digital resident, but their physical location is determined by the digital interactions. That's it for the list that I have. Again, this list is by no means comprehensive. It is one person's first attempt to organize the different types of ways that people experience ICT. This experience of the phenomena may later generate research that seeks to ascertain more grounded types through qualitative or quantitative research. But this list serves, at the very least, to enter the conversation and expand or direct the horizons of imagination on the subject. Thank you for your time. Again, I'm honored to have my digital representation present with you. I wish that I could be there in embodied form so that I could interact with you socially in addition to parasocially. The complexities of digitization are only beginning to unfold in the world around us. Everything is changing. With immersive virtual reality on the cusp of general acceptance and the holographic technology not far away on the horizon, the way people experience ICT and therefore the way they experience much of life may continue to change drastically. We are in the middle of a tectonic shift in human experience. Really, a new form of language has been developed which goes beyond mere sound put forth into space. It is certainly worthwhile to reflect on what is happening in this transition so that we will engage this brave new world with our eyes wide open. Thank you.